गुड मॉर्निंग एंड वेलकम टू गना शॉट. गना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है. At the outset, I was supposed to do this yesterday evening, but for some reason I couldn't go live at other engagements, so I'm doing it in the morning. Can the PLA capture Taiwan? It's $1 million question, debated all over the world. Debated in China, debated in Taiwan, debated in USA, debated everywhere. And this has no definite answers. That's what many people believe. But I'm very clear about it. Let me put it up front. PLA cannot capture Taiwan in its wildest dreams. Right? I'm making this a statement. And I'll justify this statement as we keep going along. This is based on many factors. But let's get, war is not based on my own, my great statement and this and that and all that. It is based on facts. You can, war is a very funny animal. You can get into a war, but you can't get out of it easily. And that's what the world has seen in Russia and Ukraine, whether Gaza, South China Sea. Wars don't get settled easily. If that was the case, South China Sea should have been completely with China by now. Right? It doesn't happen. That's the first thing. You can get into a war, you don't know the outcomes. Outcomes are not known. What's going to happen next? See, that's the important thing. China got into a war with India in 2020. It's a war of a different kind. And they had to go back to the starting point. If you have to go back to the starting point, what is the big deal about the war? Right? So war doesn't have an ending always the way you want. So theoretically, larger armies, larger capabilities should win you the war. But again, it doesn't happen that way. There are a number of examples where wars have been won by smaller nations. If wars and capability and weapons and modernization and GDPs were to win wars, why did USA lose the war against Taliban? Why did USA lose the war in Vietnam? Why did USSR lose the war in Afghanistan? These are $1 million questions which have been answered. And the answer is very simple. War is beyond capability. The capabilities to win wars doesn't stem from your GDP, it doesn't stem from your weapon systems, it doesn't stem from any one reason. It stems from a whole lot of reasons. And those whole lot of reasons, unfortunately, China doesn't have it. Okay. I might be in a minority. After all, I am daring Chinese dream. Xi Jinping has said Chinese dream is capturing Taiwan, reunification, rejuvenation of the great Chinese nation and all that. The Chinese wet dream or dry dream, call it what you want, is reunification. And I'm saying it can't be done. Right. So we'll do this in two parts. One part I'll do today, that's the military part. And the second part I'll do the political part. Maybe tomorrow, day after, whenever. We'll do it. But we'll do it. Today we'll do the political part. That's why I said, can PLA capture Taiwan? That's the question. So we'll do it systematically. What does it involve? What is capturing Taiwan involved? The common perception is, oh, every day so many planes are loafing around Taiwan, so many navies are going around Taiwan, encircled, all that. Missile firing. But have you noticed for the past 2 years, not a single missile has been fired on Taiwan? All missiles have been fired in the sea. In fact, except one occasion when Nancy Pelosi came and left Taiwan, No missile has been fired around Taiwan. All missile firing has been done in a range, in a designated area in China. And the films have been shown to us. It's not against a, uh, any target in Taiwan. Taiwan has not a bullet has been fired on Taiwan. Understand that. But then that's a different story. So we'll see what does it take for PLA to capture Taiwan. And I'm going to make it pretty military technical, technically military, right? Uh, for example, Nick says, "Good evening. Would you care to enlighten how serious China is to capture AP?" AP and all is forget it. Yeah. They can't really capture on their own tricks. Like what he says, Nana Ajay. Good morning, sir. Jai Hind. PLA can't capture Tawang. That all. I agree with him. But I'm going to talk of PL capture of Taiwan because this is their, like I said, their rejuvenation story. We need to understand it. If you understand this, you'll understand Taiwan. Well, that's why I, did that thing on geography of Taiwan. It's still some part of it is left. We'll do it. We'll do it. Don't worry. Right. This is what John Mearsheimer recently said. He makes a couple of interesting points about capture of Taiwan. So listen to that, and then I'll pick up those points and we'll go ahead. First, listen to what he says.
That if the Chinese cannot win a quick and decisive victory in their pursuit of conquering Taiwan, they will not attack. If the Chinese think that they may not even be able to conquer Taiwan, they will not attack, and we will not have a war. But as I emphasized before, it is essential that both Japan and the United States make it clear to China that Japan and the United States will come to the aid of Taiwan, because that is the best way to avoid a war over Taiwan.
He made 3 points. The victory has to be quick and decisive. If that quick and decisive victory China is not able to garner on, enforce on Taiwan, it will not go to war, and it has to win. If it feels that it cannot win and capture Taiwan, it will not go to war. And third, if Japan and USA interfere, it cannot win. These are 3 points he's made. Okay, the political conditions might be that USA and China Japan might not interfere. In fact, it won't happen. There's no condition for that, but that I will explain and discuss later. Let us look at the first factor, probably the most important factor. It has to be a quick and decisive victory. Can PLA afford that or execute a quick and decisive victory? Because if they cannot do that, China will not attack. The second point in the inherent in this is the cost of that victory. If the cost of that quick and decisive victory is too high, is China prepared to pay for it? Right? So we'll see that. These are the two questions I'm going to answer. Okay. Let's start the whole story. People don't understand this. As a result, people just blabber. Oh, China will take over Taiwan tomorrow. It doesn't happen. Look, look at Taiwan. Taiwan, north to south, is about 350 kilometers. East to west is 100 to 140 kilometers. It's a large piece of territory. I mean, for those of you who don't understand 350 kilometers, especially those from India, that's the distance. That's the distance between Chennai and Bangalore. Okay? It's a big distance. It's a big distance. And for those of you who are in the West who don't understand this, right, it is the distance one third of the British Isle. The British Isle is 960 kilometers north south. So this is one third of that. So it's a big area. The second thing is the nearest point of Chinese mainland to Taiwan is 120 kilometers. Average about 180 kilometers. That's a lot of sea. It's not simple. It's a lot of sea. You have to cross that water. Ask any army man what he fears most, okay, is water. Crossing a water obstacle and executing an attack is the most nightmarish thing for any army chap. Whether even a canal is a huge obstacle. The Chogil Canal stopped us in 1965. The complete defenses along the Pakistan border are based on canals. So water is a huge friction agent in war, and Taiwan has 120 kilometers of friction between itself and China, God given. China has to overcome this friction. There's no other way. Look, this has to be an amphibious operation. I mean, let's be very clear about it. Now you have to understand this amphibious operation. What can, what needs to happen? There are six. These are there are you know
Shri Iyer, WhatsApp audio.
there are very clear phases in a amphibious operation. Phase one is planning, preparation, and rehearsals. If you do not plan and prepare for your amphibious operation, it will fail. And you need to do rehearsals. Understand that. Extensive. Has China done that? To some extent, yes. But to a large extent, it can't. That's the thing. Second, phase two is embarkation and move to the area of operations. Because whatever forces which have to cross that 180 kilometer stretch of water have to embark at a point of time and move to that point of time. And this is something you'll have to understand. And that involves complete east coast of China. Then, of course, you have to do pre-landing operations. Not landing, not just landing, pre-landing operations. That is, you move across those 180 kilometers of water. Okay? And then you have to secure a beachhead. And you don't need one beachhead, you need 3 to 4 beachheads. What is the beachhead? A beachhead is a point where you land on water, you land on a beach where you can land and protect that place so that others can come and land there. It's a head. You make a beach with a head and you defend that head. Others can and then you slowly expand that head. You need 3 to 4 of them because beachheads are always vulnerable. I'm now generic. I'm not talking on Taiwan. We'll talk of Taiwan a little later. Okay. And then once you do that landing, get your beachhead, then you have to do land operations. Thereafter, it is land operations. Till then, it is naval operations. All right. To capture key objectives and continuous logistics build-up. You have to, and then you have to capture those areas, and then you have to maintain that, and you have to do logistics build-up. All this across 200 kilometers of water. So there are air operations, there are land operations, there are sea operations, there are space operations, and multi-domain operations. Now, each of this has a distinct phase. You cannot do shortcut on that. You can do shortcut on that, but for that, you need political issues to come in. And the politics of this whole story, any other way of capturing Taiwan has to be political in nature. A huge amount of politics involved. If politics are not involved, that is out. So I'll discuss that under politics. If Taiwan is politically compromised, some of these can be inverted, like capturing an airhead and things like that, right? Do a air landing, then capture Taipei, and then the rest. That's a different ball game altogether. But that I'll have to discuss separately because it is political in nature. So otherwise, this is the standard way of doing things. What are the essentials of an amphibious operation? This is a Let me at the outset put it across to you. An amphibious operation is the most complicated operation for an armed force. You need complete joint operations. It's probably the most, when you say joint operations, amphibious operation is a joint operation. You need coordinated, integrated fire support from artillery, air force, and navy. And this fire support has to be stitched together through seamless communications based on space or ground. And each of these systems has their own communications. The people say, oh, why can't they have the same communications? If they have the same communications, they'll screw the hell out of each other. They'll know what not communicate. They necessarily have to have different types of communication. And those different types of communication have to be stitched together. Oh man, this is very difficult. Let me tell you this. It's not easy. It's not easy. Okay. You need sea control over area of operations. That is where you're going to cross that piece of water. You need to have full sea control over it. You have to have control over it. Now, sea control also includes air control. That we'll talk. I'll just talk next. Now, that area has approaches wherever. This is very simple from mainland to Taiwan coast is the area of operations. But it can be approached north, south, everywhere. So you have to do sea denial of that. So one component of your force is trying to assault Taiwan. The other component of your force has to ensure that no one else interferes in that. So you have to do protection on either flanks. And not only that, I'll explain to you a little later what China actually has to do. It has to go further out. Sea denial. The third, it has to have air superiority over an area of operations and favorable air situation along its approaches and a coordinated air defense. Now, this air defense has to stretch from mainland China to Taiwan because once you land, you need air defense. You're vulnerable. So, air defense has to keep expanding. And as you go into Taiwan, the approaches from the air defense, all other things, you have to keep expanding. So this air defense, unfortunately, is an expanding bubble. And the air defense equipment has to go on the other side and protect your airhead, the beachheads. Okay. It's not simple. You need a coordinated air defense cover. So now this you're carrying out an attack. So you're doing sea denial, you're doing air superiority, and then you're doing air denial. It's very nice to see journals talking glibly that how China will attack. They don't talk of this. The Fourth issue is engineering effort to maintain momentum of the beaches and beyond. What is engineering effort? Field engineering. So the field engineering starts at home when you start embarking. Then you need engineering and support on the channel of water till you, that is Taiwan Strait, to ensure that there's a continuous flow of logistics across, secure logistics. And then you offload all this junk onto the beach there. Before you do any offloading, that beach has to be secure and it has to have space. Because as you keep offloading, if you're struck in the air and one thing goes and everything else, you know, all missing links will happen. It will be a bugger's muddle, let me assure you. You have to visualize this. And you need artificial harbors, which China is doing. China is making artificial harbors, floating pontoons and all that. But that's a different ball game. It's nice to talk of floating pontoons and pontoon bridges and piers and ये वो. आसान है बोलना, मुश्किल है करना. For those of you who don't understand Hindi, it is easy to talk, difficult to do in sea. Believe you me, I'm a old salt who's done many of these things at some point of time, physically on ground in rehearsals. Then you need a logistics build up. You need a supply chain. And you need logistic support to expand your exploitation areas. Because you're going into hostile territory. There's nothing there. See, one of the things about all amphibious operations is it's manpower intensive. This manpower has to be visualized the other side. If that is cut off, these guys are vulnerable. Let me assure you this. And in all this, you need smooth command and control and communications. Because by then, the number of sects which will open up are huge. Interference will happen. The radio networks numbers are huge. Uh, every guy has got his own protocol. And then command and control. There's a command and control when you embark. There's a command and control during the amphibious phase. Then there's a command and control when you land. Then there's a command and control after that. They're distinct phases of transfer of command and control. I've not seen it practiced of late anywhere. Right. So let's understand this a little further. The PLA will need to activate the area right from here to here. This is Taiwan. Huh? Area right from here to here will be activated in China. Its entire eastern seaboard will be active. When I say seaboard and active, it is not just the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force. You'll need missile and AD coverage right from here to here. And you'll need it beyond the second island chain. Where the second island chain, I'll come. China has to be prepared to tackle USA, Japan, and Philippines because they'll be sucked into battle. Already, the Japanese Prime Minister has said that it could be a threatening situation for us. We'll talk of it a little later. Okay, because of Yoniguni and all that. Where's Yoniguni? I'll talk of it. So, if any of these countries get sucked into the war by mistake or otherwise, China is at war with Taiwan, not only Taiwan, but with PLA, that is with Japan, USA, or Philippines, or all. So the risk of escalation is there from the outset. It can't be wished away. And if that's what you go back to Mearshama, what did he say in the beginning? He said the best way to avoid a war is for Japan and USA to make clear to the Chinese that they will interfere. If they interfere, there's no war. The other way is China ensures that they don't interfere. And what is this don't interfere is something we're going to talk of. We'll talk of it. It's not simple. So, right, I'm going to compare this with Normandy. Normandy landings. When did Normandy landings take place? June 6th, 1944. Look, there's something very funny about amphibious operations. The two major operations which were successful in history, one was an Normandy landings, and the second is the Incheon landings. Incheon landings is from Incheon, where the current airport in Seoul, Incheon, that's where. Okay, the Americans did the Incheon landings, and the Allied forces did the Normandy landings. The Normandy landings was against Japan. The Allied forces were against China. Sorry, Incheon landings were against China. I'll not go into the details of Incheon in this. They're only two successful. Others, of course, the Americans fought a lot of thing along the Guam chain and all that against Japanese. Then there were small landings. At this scale, only those two. The last successful amphibious operation was done by Britain against Falklands, Malvinas, in the Falkland War. When was Falkland War? Last century. It's about 40 years back. That too, the Argentinians were not, they didn't give any resistance actually. They didn't. If you go into that, they went, these guys, Port Stanley, if I remember, they got Port Stanley straight away. The Brits just landed in Port Stanley, went across and did what they had to do. The Argentinians didn't fight, couldn't fight. They were not organized to fight. It's very complicated. So let's just compare what happened in Normandy with Taiwan. You see, the thing is, like I said, China to Taiwan is 180 kilometers. England, Dover to France, or rather the Normandy landing beaches, is 150 kilometers. It bears, equation. It bears comparison. So that's why I'm doing this comparison. Okay. You know what? There were 5 divisions which landed across Normandy. There were 5 beaches: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword. Not simple, huge area. What are the volumetrically? 7,000 ships and landing craft manned by 1,95,000 naval personnel, 2 lakhs. Just think what China has to commit to capture Taiwan. Incidentally, I forgot. We'll come to the figures later. Taiwan has a population of 23 million people. So if you think those numbers are not required, look at it. Right. 1,33,000 troops did the landing in this 5 beaches. See the volumes. The landing started on 6th June. By 30th June, in a matter of 3 weeks, 850,000 men, 8.5 lakh men, and 1,48,000 vehicles, 5,70,000 tons of supplies had landed on the beach of Normandy. Because from there the invasion had to go inland. If you think there's going to be any difference for this today, just forget it. There's no difference. You got a hostile territory. All this, or I'm talking, comes to zero if Taiwan is politically compromised. I'll talk of that separately. What is involved in political compromise? If Taiwan decides to fight, This is what China has to do. Look at this bugger's muddle, 6 June 1944. These orange things are where embarkation took place. And behind England also, they embarked and came crisscross and lot of things into land in this area. That is why I said this entire area, people have to embark and move and come here. There's no other choice. Some will come here, some will go this side, some will go that side. We'll talk of that. So complete China has to mobilize. Eastern Theatre Command and Southern Theatre Command. And incidentally, if Eastern Theatre Command and Southern Theatre Command take it from me, old man who knows fighting, China's other theatre commands have to go on full alert. Not only that, the whole lot of resources from other theatre commands will come into this theatre command. There's no choice. I mean, this is the law of forge. Very complicated. It has not been attempted afterwards. The only time I said it is attempted after that was under Douglas MacArthur in Cheon, Korea War. But that's a story. I'll one day cover what happened in Korea separately. This is one picture of one beach. Just see. Just see helicopters flying around. Those days, yeah, 1944, mein. See one beach, how much, see these harbors, yeah, see ships laying off. Not a simple thing. Mulberry harbors towed 30 miles across English Channel on D-Day from southern England, then sunk into place about a mile off France northwest shore the same day. They could do it there, but can they do it here? Harbors were made in England, kept ready, and they were hidden away from Germany, and they towed into place. A kilometer or 2 kilometers away from the shore, they sunk it, put it, and these harbors were used because the beaches, you couldn't land normal things. You had to create harbors. From the harbors, they created channels. And English Channel is a very, very nice channel. People swim across English Channel. Currents and all are very simple there. This is open sea. The Taiwan Strait is not simple. Okay, I will talk of that. We'll talk of that. So why this whole story of amphibious landing is difficult is this. Look at this. This is a bugger's model. Do Chinese have the capability? You will say AI. That's natural stupidity. You talk of AI in this. AI will solve everything except the fact that you have to put your legs in water. There's no artificial water, there's no robots. Robots will not go there. So let's not talk of robots, AI, PAI, and all this nonsense. All that will go for a toss. It's gone. I mean, it'll just vanish. Hard soldiering is the order of the day. Very important. You see, when you mobilize a country, it's not simple. In those days, they could do it because there are no satellites, air recce was less. The way you can do things, the communications were less. When I say internet services were less. Today, in an interconnected world, globalized world, shipping is there, yeah, whoa, all that. How do you hide this whole story? If 10 ships go extra in Taiwan Strait, hackles are up. Today, everyone is monitored. It's not simple. Okay. I told you the first thing in this whole story is rehearsal. Before the Normandy Normandy landings, which is in 1944. There's something called a Dieppe raid, which is carried out before. Okay, where is Dieppe? Yeah, look at this. This is Dieppe. They did a landing. The Britishers did a landing. I mean, Allied forces did a landing. I think 6 to 7 months before. I'm forgetting the date. Maybe a year before also. And when they landed, they failed. The Germans scorched it. Okay? The moment the Germans scorched it, I mean, they expected this raid to fail. It was based on that failure, actual, the raid was not a raid, it was an amphibious crossing, and which failed. Based on that, they they planned this Normandy landing. China doesn't have a place to rehearse this. China is one shot affair. That's one. Everyone is expecting China. There are no alternatives. There are no alternatives to Taiwan. Everyone knows that China has to go only to Taiwan. Whereas in the Normandy landings, they could land here or land here. That's Kalai. Yeah, this is Kalai. Those of you can't see it, see. Okay, this is Kalai. Dover. This is the shortest from Dover, Strait of Dover to the French thing. So everyone thought they will go across Dover. The landing will come through Dover. Okay, the Dover Straits. And they went here, which was the largest distance. So everyone knew there were two. One was here, whether they will do in Normandy. There were some places here also they could do, Brittany. But Brittany coast is difficult. So the first was the Brittany coast, second was Normandy, third is Calais, Padi Calais. And you go back into history and you see the choices which the Britishers had were Padi Calais or Normandy or Pas de Calais, and an elaborate system was put up to fool the Germans. Till the last day, the Germans didn't know whether the landing would come at Pas de Calais or in Normandy. They didn't know. Even on the day when this thing started, they didn't know. It was only by midday they started sensing. Those are not the days of satellite, and all. That look uh, when the ships were just off, then they realized this happened because early morning they started. So the Allies achieved surprise. In this case, there's no surprise. There is Taiwan. Taiwan has X number of beaches where they can go. They can go nowhere else. There's no second island which China can go and attack at this scale. There's no deception involved. They can't deceive. The Chinese can't deceive anyone. It's not deceiving Taiwan. It is deceiving Japan. It is deceiving America. It is deceiving Philippines and everyone else who's watching China. So, without a rehearsal, without surprise, will China succeed? These two factors itself kills the whole story. And China might still invade. That's a different story. Will they succeed? That's the point. Then there's the issue of the longest day. You see a movie, there's a war movie called The Longest Day. When I was in school, I saw that. Why the longest day? The longest day is 21st, 22nd June, solstice. Unfortunately, in war, you don't go by AI. You go by actual sea conditions, met conditions, weather conditions. You need the longest day there because you need maximum daylight hour to execute this. And today, in the maximum daylight hour, when maximum daylight hour is there, you're exposed. Okay, so there is a huge problem for China to under, because the day you start, because it takes time. You just, it's not as if everyone can go and take over. First, the assaulting troops have to go. Once the assault takes place, then certain, in stages, your fire support has to go. Then your ammunition has to go, and then your logistics has to come. In between, you have to build bridges and harbors and jetties and all, which China keeps advertising it's doing. Okay, when all this is happening, something is happening behind. And after the initial troops, are settled, yeah, whoa, all that, the second lot of people have to come. It is not as if just you landed on the beach and made a beachhead, you won that day. Yeah, enemy, yeah, the other chap is shooting at you. He has to expand, no? So more troops have to come in. So second wave has to come, a third wave has to come. And how difficult it is, I'm just going to talk of it. Then the sea conditions. The Taiwan sea conditions are not simple. They're very rough. They're very rough. And what about monsoon? We'll talk of that a little later. So there's a whole lot of imponderables. People glibly say, China will take over Taiwan. My left foot. We talk of Taiwan. In that part of the world, look at the floods and typhoons which Taiwan has to, not Taiwan, China has to suffer. Beijing floods, this floods, Guangdong floods. You heard of all that nonsense. Copious rain. These are tropical weathers, yeah. Tropical, just above the tropics. The tropics are not simple. You look at Bay of Bengal. Incidentally, our monsoon system is linked to the Chinese monsoon system. For those of you who don't understand it. The monsoon brings heavy rain between May and September. So this season is out. Summer season is out. You don't undertake amphibious operations between May and September when there is tropical rain. Well, tropical cyclones and typhoons often make a landfall. You can't force fit amphibious operations between two typhoons. It takes time. It brings bringing destructive winds and flooding rain. And typhoon activity peaks between July and October in that part of the world. Humidity fine. The drier season is October and March. So 6 months in a year, forget it. The other 6 months in the year is what you can do. But there are other factors in that other 6 months of the year. Okay, the other 6 months of the year doesn't mean that weather is nice. You can go swim across and do what you want in Taiwan. Because this northeast monsoon is linked to monsoons there. It's not, they're drier. It doesn't mean they're dry. Okay, now let's talk a few interesting things about Taiwan. Assuming that all this happens, seamlessly, how do you capture Taiwan? How do you capture Taiwan? Even if China's military successfully establishes a beachhead, given the fact that it has established a beachhead, please understand Taiwan is a mountainous area. That's what this picture tells you. It's a mountainous area. They've got snow-capped peaks here. There's very little plain area. So you're going to fight this area, all these areas you have to capture. And then what about this area? How do you capture this? Mountains. You need to do mountain fighting. It's a mountainous terrain. This is the kind of mountains Taiwan has along the sea. This is the picture of the Taiwanese coast. It's not of India. Okay? And then, very interesting. Taiwan's 23 million people are largely here. It's a heavily populated area and urban area. So that means you're going to do urban fighting, jungles, not jungle, sorry. Yeah, built up area fighting. Anyone who's done built up area fighting will understand. Who's gone into a village or a thing to do built up area fighting will understand how complex it is. PLA has got no experience on all this. There are only very few countries who have done built up area fighting. Built up area fighting is manpower intensive. Okay, we know how difficult it is to flush a terrorist out of a house. We've done a lot of built up area fighting, and that too in villages. This is huge cities, developed cities. Taipai, they have to control Taipai city and the new Taipai city. Taipai is in a bowl surrounded by mountains. And they've got only three approaches into Taipai. And China, you see, one thing is, it's nice to talk, all that, but there's an enemy there. Unfortunately for China, the guys on the other side are also Chinese. They understand these fellows better than us. And there are only three entrances into Taiwan. I mean, into Taipai. You have to capture this. See, where did Ukraine thing fail? Ukraine failed because Russians couldn't capture Kiev in the first go. Remember, they came from the north, they came to the outskirts of Kiev and went back. And they've been struggling ever since. Or they'll get the territory and all, but the territory, Russians always had it. Donetsk and Luhansk. They've added a little bit of Kherson and Yevo, that's all. After 3 years. Here they have to capture these. If the Taiwanese put their defenses here, the Chinese can keep fighting. This is the way Taiwan looks. This is a picture of Taipai. Okay? This is a picture of Taipai. You need to understand how difficult the terrain is to capture Taipai. And if Taipai is not captured, thank you, this goes nowhere. Okay. Then you might land here, you might land here, you might land here, 2, 3 places, 5, 10 places. Unfortunately, after that, you have to capture this area. You don't go like this. You can't go like this because this is 9,000, 10,000 feet. You have to go across. And across is a riverine terrain. This is the rivers. This is the topography of Taiwan. You can't run away from it. And then there's another great thing which Taiwan is blessed with. Taiwan is a defender's paradise. Okay. The east coast of Taiwan, from there it goes up to 9,000 feet, just like a jiffy. You can't land on this east coast at all. It's a very steep coast. On the west coast, this is all shallow water. Very shallow. Okay. Very shallow. This is so shallow you cannot imagine. I think, yeah. This is 1 mile of shallow water. 1.5 kilometers of shallow water. That means transport ships have to come here. The Chinese have to build something here where they can offload the stuff. And from there, they have to have jetties to come in, which the Chinese are trying. But just think of putting something down here and building and doing this 1.5 kilometers. It's like 20 things coming in together, lines of communication. If a few of them are blown off by natural things or by what Taiwan does, this operation will go nowhere. That's it. If one beach goes down, I can bet you PLA will collapse. And then you can't land anywhere. You can't, when the Allied forces crossed across into France, there are only two places where they could land. One was Normandy landings, but Normandy landings also was 5 beaches on Pas de Calais. They had about 6, 7 beaches there. The choices. That are the two choices. In between, they had went to Dieppe. Dieppe was a small place for a thing. The Brittany coast was difficult. You go to the Brittany coast, you'll understand. In Taiwan, the number of places where you can actually land is what are these yellow places. You can't land on the ports. Huh? The ports you need to capture later. It is in these beaches which you can do. And what they are all ready. The Taiwanese are not fools. They know exactly where you can land, you can't land. They've built obstacles. They've got a plan for each beach. There'll be a good welcoming party for everyone who's trying to come in and land here. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, the key to defending Taiwan is this. If Taiwan, I mean, it is the key is to alter the force ratios. Okay. If you alter the force ratios at a critical point of contact, things go wrong. Now, understand this. You know, in a place, say a house which is fortified, built up area, needs 3 to 4 people to defend it. Okay, normally. And to take that, you'll need 20 people because built up area has got that multiplicative factor. But if at the critical point, I feel that is critical, I put, instead of 3 people in that house, I put 6 people in that house to defend it. So every entry into that house is covered. I need 6 times more to overpower that house. So the force ratios change. And at critical points, if Taiwan is able to change the force ratios, especially in the initial stages, the Chinese will need a hell of a lot of guys to overpower that force. They might eventually overpower that force. Might, because you don't know. But the time and the cost and the casualties will be huge. You need to upset the PLA time schedule. Remember what Mearshama said in the beginning? Time is critical. This whole operation is time critical. And if to defend Taiwan, I carry the battle to mainland China. And what happens? The moment the first shot is fired, if the battle is on the mainland, I don't have to just defend the beaches. By the time the beach gets assaulted, I can fire on the beaches, I can fire on ships in between, I can fire on the mainland at the ports of embarkation. Because this is going to be a long affair. And I can also hurt China's industrial. After all, that's their industry. So China has to commit its entire eastern seaboard for this nonsense. It's not simple. China will have to pay a very heavy price militarily for this. And I'm not talking political, okay? Look at what this man says. Understand, he was a general in USA.
So when I look at the map, I see people, I see terrain, I see borders, and I see sovereignty. When others look at the map, and traditionally, I think this has been part of our challenge in the United States, we look at the map and we see blue. We see an ocean and we see air, and we say, well, we can solve this problem with, more ships, more subs, more airplanes, more jets, more precision guided munitions, more satellites. Look, I'm not against a large U.S. Navy and a large U.S. Air Force and all the other capabilities that have to come with things, platforms. In fact, we need them. Why? because they do only what the United States can do, which is keep the global commons open. What I'm saying is that region is a joint and it's a multinational problem. It's a joint and multinational theater, and it can only be solved by joint and multinational applications in all domains. That includes the land forces. The predominant force in Asia is its armies. I'll go through a couple of facts. India, 80% of its military is its army. Indonesia, 75%. Thailand, 75%. Vietnam, 80%. Heck, the Philippines, 70% of its military is its army, has more divisions than the US Army does. And I could go on and on. The point I'm making is there's a natural partnering and a persistent state of connection between land forces in the region, and we cannot discount those forces in the region that are land-based, that what do? They protect their territorial integrity and they defend their national sovereignty. And some of those forces are beginning to step up in ways that we never saw before. And that's one of the things I'm very proud of my time, over the last 10 years out in the region is really trying to tie together a strategic land power network as a counterweight to what the Chinese are doing. I'll go on a little bit here and also say that some experts, and I'll leave that open, is they often refer to the Chinese Navy as its center of gravity. And I say, no, it's not its center of gravity. Why? Because the military definition is that which you need in order to achieve your objective, okay? My view is you can't invade Taiwan with the Chinese Navy and the Chinese Air Force. You actually have to deliver an invasion force, and that is its Chinese army. That's the PLA, okay, of which there are many of them. And my point is that we have a way of increasing the indications and warnings to our national command authority by watching the Army. Why? Because the Army, it actually has to mobilize, move, combat configure, combat load, and then get across the Taiwan Strait in order to seize, hold, and subjugate the people of Taiwan. Now, the last time we did something like that successfully was the Incheon landing. It is a highly, highly complex operation. And the point I'm making here is the naval incursions and the air incursions are happening every day at alarming rates. And that keeps the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy really engaged every day, not to mention Japanese, Korean, and of course, Taiwan and others. But my point here is that if we get command and control, we get intelligence collection forward, along with sustainment, along with protection, and we tie together the synergy between the forces in the region on the land, then we can impose dilemmas on the Chinese that heretofore we've not put on them. If you want to understand if they're going to mobilize that PLA army, then you've got to watch the PLA army, because it will take time for them to actually move from their garrisons to the coast, load those vessels, and get across. You're not going to see and have that kind of time with air power and naval power from the Chinese. There'll be some indicators, but when they start moving that army, then there's a problem. Things need to stop very quickly. So what keeps me up at night? What keeps me up at night is their ability to actually pull that off in 96 hours. That's what keeps me up at night. So anything that we can do to slow down that timeline, feed doubt, sow paranoia, and introduce new dilemmas to the Chinese leadership, then we are on a stronger footing by way of deterrence and denying them the ability to think that they could pull that off.
So that's the key. What is he saying? Timeline, post ratios. You do that way. 96 hours is too long. I would say in the first 24 hours, and that 24 hours starts when people start setting their foot on the beaches. The PLA. So overall, it's not going to be an easy cakewalk for the Chinese. In fact, it will be the toughest thing they've done in their life. Remember, their gross domestic product by region here, it is in this place. And third, you have to hit them there. If the Taiwanese decide that this 37% of GDP areas are going to get hit, and USA joins in, and Japan joins in, and even Philippines joins in, then China is outmatched. After all, this is the one which is opposite, and this is the place from where they're going to mobilize. If that is the place of mobilization, they will be hit. The ports will be hit. If the ports are hit, China's entire industry comes to a halt. Their exports will come to a halt, and this air thing will not finish in 1 day, 2 days, 1 month, 2 months. Look at the difference in the air forces. Look at this is a thing of yesterday. I saw pick this up yesterday as of Taiwan Strait military balance. Taiwan still has a lakh people who will defend. If I have lakh people to defend Taiwan, I'll the PLA to get across need 7 to 8 lakhs. Then now those Normandy things come in. 7 to 8 lakhs have to come into the Taiwan island. It's a big commitment. It's not easy. Okay, just the ground forces. Okay, then artillery, combined arms brigades. You know, the defender needs just about 1/3 in conventional war. But with terrain added, this will be, and amphibious, whatever Taiwan can put on ground, China needs 6 times at that point. Does it have the capability to do so? I don't think so. Right? Naval forces are not relevant to Taiwan because Taiwan doesn't need navy to go and attack China. It needs ground forces and it needs air forces. Taiwan has 350 fighter aircraft. You know, Eastern and Southern theater, China might have twice or thrice the amount, but it has more commitment also. So in air, you might find a situation where Taiwan will match China at the point of contact. Because if you're doing this, the reason is simple. Taiwan has to take care of this area and this area, whereas China has to take care of this area. So at the point of contact, Taiwan and China will be equal. At the point of contact, China needs to commit 6 times the force ratio of Taiwan. At the non-contact point or along this periphery, which is the part of the blockade, China has to commit another 6 lakhs people. So so China has to be prepared to put about 10 lakh people in this area. Okay, and then this is Guam. You expect China, US state to be quiet when all this is being attacked? This is Philippines. Then this is the Senkakus from Okinawa down to Yonaguni. China has to take care of those. So troops on ground. Now, if you put so many troops on ground, there's no choice but for Philippines and Japan to react. If they do react, China, US has to react. Has to. It's not a matter of political statements. People don't understand this. And if these do, they'll block all this off. These are the straits between South Korea and Japan, Miyagi Straits. Then there'll be a deployment along Guam. Then the Bashi Straits, which is between Philippines and Taiwan, Luzon and Taiwan, and then of course Malacca Straits. All these are blocked. And if Philippines is getting affected, they'll do something in South China Sea. Then what happens to Chinese trade? China has to be prepared that there'll be no trade for the next 6 months. Because if China succeeds, there will be a lot of issues. If China doesn't succeed, still there'll be issues. Then what happens to China internally? Those are political issues. We'll talk of it next time. Look, China doesn't have experience. We've known their weapon systems are unreliable. They don't have leadership. Every day, these days, I see one chap or the other being sacked. If there's no leadership, if there's no clarity of thought with the leadership, how will they go and fight across and do carry out a most complicated operation like I've said? After all, the leadership has to do preparation, planning, execution is by leadership. Every second day you change a leader. I mean, all of you are working in organizations. If you have 4 bosses in 1 year, how will you work? I mean, it's fundamental common sense, isn't it? The Chinese don't have, 10 foot tall. They are bloody the same 4.5 foot guys with 2 pigtails. And as far as Xi Jinping is there, he's destroying his PLA. And their weapons, you've seen what's happening in Thai Cambodia war. We've seen what happened in Op Sindoor. Their air defense systems didn't work. Their missiles didn't fly. Their command and control system gone. Now, the only thing which they've left with is propaganda. And that is coming unwinding in Cambodia and Taiwan. I mean, Thailand, about which I put out a video on how effective or ineffective they are. Then the hard part begins after you land on the island. That no one has done anything about it. The PLA is untested. You can keep flying around Taiwan with ships and all that. What do you do about that PLA which is useless? We've seen the PLA. One maneuver in Kailash range took the wind out of the sails out of the PLA. They didn't know what to do. Isn't it? It happened 4 years back. People don't understand. They forget it. And there is a thing about this information and propaganda and all. The hard realities of life are often forgotten. We have short memories of that. What did we do in thing? We didn't fire a shot. We just maneuvered in high altitude. The day you maneuver and know how to maneuver in high altitude, PLA was exposed. The PLA is useless. Why do you think they went back in 2020? I mean, 2024 after that Kazan meet? We discussed this. Why did it happen? Because they cannot sustain themselves there. If they can't do that there, can they do it in Taiwan? They can do. The hard part begins there. Then there's the lack of surprise, which I spoke to you. What is the risk of escalation? Will China be prepared to accept the risk of escalation and the politics behind it? What will India and US do? Japan and Philippines have no choice but to get in. What will India and China, US do? $1 million question. Forget what India does, what China, US does. How do the Chinese perceive this? How do the Chinese guarantee themselves that India will not attack them from the West? How do the Chinese guarantee that USA doesn't enter this war? If I were a Chinese, I'll have to think 1,000 times and then I'll still not have an answer. You just have to feed into this paranoia, and that's the end of the Chinese invasion. It'll never start. So this is what I had to say today. I hope you guys have liked it. This is the military part. I've not talked of the politics of this whole story. If you're a foreigner, you're a Britisher, American, economist, whatever you are, this is the story of a simple soldier who knows how to fight, who can understand what is going to happen. And I'm sure a lot of guys will understand. That's why I got that foreigners, that Mearsheimer and that Flynn. I don't need them. It is to convince you people who are watching from abroad that your people are the wiser people than me. They'll tell you understand. Don't listen to me. I can talk. I mean, I can make those points similarly, but this is just a holistic way of putting across things. I have an open mind about what I'm going to speak. You have to have an open mind of what I'm going to talk and understand what I'm talking. That US general also spoke of Incheon landings. So have I. I can dissect the Incheon landings. Look, I was lucky that I've landed in Incheon 2-3 times. While others were enjoying the bus ride, I was watching how did MacArthur do this. That's fascinating. Okay. So, well, this is what I had to say today. We'll follow it up one other day. If you guys liked it and you get good response, I'll do the political aspects of invasion of Taiwan. With this, I come to the end today. It's a little long, but worth it. If you liked it, press the like button and subscribe to Gunner Shot. As also, you know, contribute to the larger cause by becoming members.